What are we watching today? I hope it's wholesome and family friendly.
Oh, it's family friendly, all right. It's got puppets. It's got musical numbers.
Yep.
It's Peter Jackson's Meet the Feebles.
Meet the Feebles! Meet the Feebles! We're not your average, ordinary people. Meet the Feebles.
So Meet the Feebles, 1989.
Peter Jackson's second film coming off of Bad Taste, and it's still part of what he calls himself his trash trilogy, which was finished with Brain Dead a couple of years later.
I always remember back in the 90s, you'd look at those like, they're the cult favourite. They're awesome films.
Oh yeah. Okay, so Meet the Feebles it's pretty challenging in many, many ways. Like, it has something to offend everybody in it, but it is full on, energetic, go for it, let's do everything we can on a limited budget filmmaking. It has a lot of things you will not see in anything else. I can guarantee that you will see things in this movie that you will never see in any other kind of film.
But it's all puppets, so it's all good. It's
all
for
good.
kids.
And there's catchy musical numbers.
I got one leg missing. I got one leg missing.
I got one leg missing.
How do I get around?
It's kind of similar to the Muppets in that it's this band of like performers doing a variety show.
Yeah, well, they got the 12 hours to their first television broadcast.
But unlike the Muppets, they're all on drugs and
They're deranged.
nasty people.
I just started today. I'm Wobert. You may be Wobert to your friends, but you're fly shit to me.
The producer of the show, Bletch, the walrus, when he isn't banging his Siamese cat prostitute girlfriend
Oh, shit!
on the side from his love of his life, Heidi the hippo, who just happens to be the star of the show,
All right, you fat slag, move your ass.
he's dealing drugs, or has his seedy sideman, Trevor the rat, filming pornos in the basement.
I beg you, please, man, stop me. Call me sir. Slut. Ow!
With the very large uddered cow.
Harry!
There's Harry the hare, who's sort of I don't know what role he plays in the show, apart from jumping out of the carrot.
Well, he's the main sort of compere.
But when he's not doing that, he's having threesomes and getting STDs.
There's also a frog who's a Vietnam vet, and he's on all drugs.
He's hooked on heroin after a particularly traumatic Vietnam experience, which they show it all in flashback. It was funded by the actual filmmakers. They ran out of money,
Yeah.
and they shot it under the title Frogs of War. And I would actually watch an entire feature film of that flashback alone. It's pure gold.
Well, it's kind of parodying, Apocalypse Now and Deer Hunter references.
But it's left him a shell of a frog.
The gophers in Vietnam, the Asian puppets. Oh. The Vietnamese puppets. Look, it's not anything really worse than much else in this film. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, in this day and age, that's probably the one thing that people will be offended by. There's a panty-sniffing aardvark.
Gold Dennis. He gets lured into porn. And in the center of it is a wholesome pairing of Wobert, the hedgehog, who's now in the chorus, and Lucille, who he instantly falls in love with before she's drugged and sexually assaulted by Trevor the rat. Yeah, there is so much going on.
I still find it amazing that it's an M rating in Australia, which is, I guess, the equivalent of PG-13 in the US.
Well, that's the thing. On the box, it says adult concepts. Most definitely. Sexual illusions.
Illusions, a bit more than that.
And occasional violence. What else have we got in this movie? Oh, we've got an elephant that's knocked up a chicken.
He doesn't believe that it's his, except it's got his eyes.
He may look like a lovable old pachyderm, but he's a steaming great shit.
And then later on, he urinates all over two dogs.
I'm on in 5 minutes.
The more you go through it, it's like, oh, and then this happens, and then that happens, and then there's a fly eating shit.
Carrots, it's not one of yours, is it, Harry?
You are sick.
A fly who represents the press.
Yes, it was ahead of its time there with its display of mainstream media. There is nothing like Meet the Feebles. They tried a couple of years ago with that one.
Happy Time Murders, which didn't really hit the mark. I think Happy Time Murders was along the same lines. They had swearing in it, which this Meet the Feebles doesn't really have much swearing.
No.
And Happy Time Murders had some quite full-on sexual sort of references and sexual bits, but the rest of it didn't seem to go far enough. Like, it didn't go as far as this. It didn't go as far as if that was made by Matt Stone or Trey Parker, or it just sort of missed it. But
it didn't have a musical number about sodomy. This is where he spends the whole movie going, I'm going to do my number. And it's like, don't you dare do your number. And he's like, right, we're doing it, people.
But I still remember back in the 90s, those Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles, they were the classic, awesome films. And the fact that the New Zealand film industry was doing those films, because they were actually, they were funded from the New Zealand film
Yes, I think this had some
well.
Japanese backers as well. Kind of explains a few things.
Because these are the sort of films that would never happen in Australia with funding from the Australian government.
No, because Australia
funded
only
ones.
makes one kind of film with colourful Australian characters who highlight our natural beauty and our wonderful land.
Yeah.
And if they're from Melbourne, they're a bit urban and depressing. And if they're from Sydney, they're over the top and colourful.
Yeah, they're a bit out there. This was the thing that always got me, that you had Peter Jackson doing his pretty full-on horror films and these sort of over-the-top films that were funded by the New Zealand film funding bodies, and it did lead to him having a huge career. That became a massive part of the gross domestic hang on. That became a huge part of the New Zealand GDP. Making all the Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit films, it's been huge, and he's still based in New Zealand. He's got Weta Digital.
It's all in Wellington.
Weta Digital's one of the premier effects companies in the world now because he was able to do this.
Yeah, exactly. Brain Dead contains some of the most amazing splatter effects in it.
Yeah.
It still holds up to this day. I will surely do a VHS Gold on Brain Dead one day, although I have no idea how we're going to show any footage out of it.
Because it actually was quite a small release. It got released in New Zealand in '89, but then it pretty much took half of the 90s for it to get released around the world. I think it was 91 in Australia, and some places didn't get it until, like America didn't get it until 95.
Yeah.
Like, it took a while for it to come out because it's a small film.
It is very much a cult film. It was a massive flop on release, but that's the definition of cult.
It is refreshing to see something like this. I'm sure some people would be a bit shocked by it, but it's not serious.
No holds barred filmmaking with little to no care to who they offend.
Because quite often when you have something that is quite offensive, it's not so much the actual offensiveness, it's the fact that they dared to do it, to say something or do something. That's kind of the funny thing. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah.
Is the main thing about these sorts of TV shows, films, comedies.
Absolutely. Comedy should always push the limits, and I think these days especially it doesn't.
Yeah, it's drying up.
It doesn't. They just don't do it.
Comedy's hard enough as it is. And then if you've got to basically take away all the things that really make good comedy, and going too far.
And having racist caricatures of Vietnamese people.
I mean, these are old films that we're not really having to spoiler alerts or anything, but Heidi goes on a mass shooting rampage.
Well, it all culminates to the television broadcast, which is interrupted when Heidi has a complete breakdown with an M16 and massacres everything inside.
Eat leg, you man-stealing slut!
Which didn't happen as much back then in the world, but since then it has happened a lot more.
Well, that's
and in
the
fact,
thing.
New Zealand has suffered a horrible one more recently.
Watching it was like, oh, it's funny. Out of everything, when I rewatched this, that was what I thought, oh wow, like to see that in a film.
Now put that gun down, Heidi. You're not solving anything by massacring people.
I couldn't give a shit about the orgies and the drug taking and all the rest of it, but watching someone going from room to room with a high-powered automatic weapon, gunning down.
That's perhaps a bit close to reality of recent years.
It was a bit much. The urban legend is that thing wasn't firing blanks, that was live ammo, but oh my God.
I did read that, they couldn't find the blanks for that gun.
That would have been some serious damage to the fucking theatre they were filming it in.
Maybe they're just talking about a few shots, but I can't believe all of that was just real.
The
There's no
damage
way.
they would have done.
So Meet the Feebles, it's full on. It's out there. It's over the top.
It's unique.
It's very unique.
It's something you've never seen before and you will never see again. Even if they want to try and do it a cheaper American ripoff, they'll never take it this far.
If you get easily offended by little things, then don't watch it.
Or push your limits and watch it.
Actually, you need to get that sort of desensitized.
Desensitize yourself a little. Just a little. This is a good movie to do it with.
And perfect VHS gold.
Perfect VHS gold.
It wasn't my fault.
You've been overeating again.
No, I haven't.
There is Black Forest cherry cake in your cleavage.
Oh, how did that get there?
Don't be feeble. Click like and subscribe. Turn on those notifications and see when the next episode of VHS Gold hits the internet. Hey, at least in this one I didn't call anyone a miserable cunt.